Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. Stephen Morris here with Advisory, and today I have Afshin Asher with the Asher Law Group, and we're going to talk less about tax today. We're going to talk more about asset protection, specifically as you're planning to eventually give your assets to your kids during life or upon death. What are the considerations around it? What are some of the interesting areas and topics in terms of best practices as well? What are the things we want to take a look at? So with that in mind, Afshin, why don't you give us a little bit of what we're going to be talking about here today?
So much. Years ago, I was told that I have the looks for radio. So I tried my luck with having a 4-program series on a radio station. And we talked about probate on one session, and some people called. We talked about estate taxes, and a few people called. Then I got into how to protect your children's inheritance if they get divorced or sued. And I kid you not, the lines were lit up and I heard that once we got off the program, people were still calling and about that issue. So Very quickly I realized that people may be concerned about a lot of things, but they're particularly concerned about their children getting divorced or even sued, but to a lesser extent in the future.
Sure.
And so the old method of leaving inheritance to children at certain ages or in certain increments doesn't work.
Okay.
Because the moment your children acquire the asset in their name, it's like anything else that they have, and it's subject to being commingled with their spouses and creditor claims and so forth. So what we do at Asher Law Group usually is to create trust structures that go on forever, essentially. And rather than having the children get inheritance in their name, each child would have a trust that's created for them upon death, and their inheritance goes into that trust, and you specify at what age they get to control that trust. And with careful drafting and administration, that affords incredible protection. It makes it more difficult to get commingled. In California especially, asset protection is very difficult to accomplish.
Sure.
When we create a trust for ourselves, my trust or your trust, it doesn't protect us from lawsuits.
Yeah.
But California law does allow a trust to be protected if it was created by someone else for the beneficiary. And so with careful planning, we can protect your children for life, and yet they can still have pretty good control over their inheritance.
So what's maybe give us a horror story on how this happens. Are we talking about the family home that's been in the family for a couple generations? It goes down to one of the children and they get divorced. Have you seen a situation where spouse got the home in the divorce?
I've seen a situation where the spouse got a portion of the home, for sure. And oftentimes with rental properties, the spouse tries to attach the income from those rental properties and say that's community property, and investments as well. Also, let's face it, our children sometimes make mistakes. They're in love, and they don't think about the future. And once they get the asset in their name, sometimes they get pressured into having assets into both of their names, and sometimes they just do it out of a show of love and affection.
Sure.
And that's it. The protection's lost. But when it's locked up in a trust, the child can't do it. And the child can say, honey, I love you. I would have done it, but my parents did this. I can't do it.
The trust locked me up.
Yeah. And it gives an escape valve for your child.
Yep.
And more importantly, as a matter of law, it makes most of it unreachable by creditors.
Great.
I'm not saying it's a 100% thing, but it is the best we can accomplish in California.
You brought up an interesting point about commingling the assets, and especially as it relates to community property states. Not all 50 states are community property. California is one of them. We have Arizona. We have a few other examples of community property states. Let's talk a little bit about what that is, and especially as it relates to this asset protection here. How can a situation like in a community property state where you're earning income taint or otherwise bring in these separate assets into the community?
Well, the simplest form is just retitling assets into community property.
Sure.
Also, from the moment you're married, your time is a community asset.
Yep.
People forget about that. So if one person is going to work and the other person is lying on the couch and having bonbons and watching reality shows, it doesn't matter. The one that's going to work Their time is community property, their income is community property. So oftentimes you get community property interest created by management. So I frequently advise my younger clients that if you have separate property, rental property, let's say, and it requires a lot of time for management, either do two things. If at all possible, hire a property manager. Pay them so that you can say, you know what, I didn't spend my time managing the property, the community didn't acquire interest. Or if you are gonna, there's no choice around it, you have to manage it, get paid for your management service. And that is community property income. There's no way around that. But in the event of divorce, at least there's an argument that you got paid for your management services, those payments were reasonable and consistent with somebody else. This is compensation, and this way we at least have an argument that it wasn't communal.
So maybe we have a structure set up where all the separate property that you own, all these different real estate holdings are generating income or paying a management fee, maybe to your S Corp or something along those lines, and then that income is going to be community property.
Right.
Whereas you've insulated or at least put a barrier between the actual rental income itself and the property management income.
But without doubt, the best structure is to have the properties in LLCs. The LLCs owned by irrevocable trusts for your children.
Yep.
And now we've built multiple layers of protection. If at all possible, hire a property manager and protect your child's inheritance.
So you have a home that you maybe owned prior to being married, and you get married, you got to pay the mortgage. Pay it with your salary that you're earning. What happens there?
That's commingled. That's a tough one to get around.
Yeah.
A law professor once told me that think about your separate property like a glass of milk and your community property like a Hershey's bottle of chocolate. And you start squeezing a few drops of chocolate into your milk. At the beginning, you can see the white milk and the chocolate on top. But the more you start dropping in there, after a while, it just becomes a light brown mess, and you can't tell the difference between the milk and the chocolate anymore. And that's kind of the same thing. That's a tough thing to get around. It becomes community property gradually. But in those cases, when you don't have a prenup, what I advise my clients is to get an appraisal of the property before you got married. So that if something happens and you're splitting up, you can have evidence of what the property was worth when you got into the marriage. And worst case scenario, you have commingled the appreciation.
That makes perfect sense. So I hope this was enlightening for you guys here, especially as it relates to asset protection. I believe this is an area of law that is very poorly understood by the general public, and without some proper planning and consideration, you can find that your assets are actually going to have an outcome, an ownership outcome, that is a little bit different than what you were planning for. So if you're trying to get some asset protection, if you're trying to plan for your assets to not have an outcome like this, then you can feel free to reach out to us over here, and we'll be more than happy to assist you as it relates to asset planning, asset protection, and making sure that your assets are going to the right place that you've always intended to. Thank you so much for watching, and look forward to seeing you in our next video. So make sure to like and subscribe to our channel for all the content related to real estate investment and tax saving strategies.